Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Potatosaurus, and it is, what do you think about DICE making a new World War II game? I feel like every game developer focuses on making futuristic games, Titanfall, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Destiny, etc. And I think that a World War II game with top-notch levolution, graphics, and gameplay would make a really nice and popular game. What are your thoughts on this? I would love if DICE decided to do something like this, but you also have to remember that the reason why we don't have many World War II shooters anymore is because 10 plus years ago, or maybe it was a little bit sooner than that, that's all game developers were making. If you wanted to play a shooter, it was going to be set during that time period. It was oversaturated, people were getting bored of the setting, and so developers got smart. Publishers realized that this was an issue. They wanted to make the games fresh and fun, and so they pushed things into the modern military setting. Nowadays, we have a crazy amount of modern military shooters, and developers are once again trying to make their games fresh and fun, and so we now see this trend in futuristic games. And so I guess the question now is, are gamers ready to go back to World War II for a big Battlefield game? I think so. Like, I don't have the stats. Maybe someone at DICE has, crazy amount of spreadsheets and like, no, consumers are wanting futuristic right now. We need to go down that path. That's the way that we're going to get as much money out of our games. That could be possible, but especially since it appears that all the other AAA titles are going down the futuristic route, this could be a great way for DICE to distinguish themselves from the pack. Hey, you tired of their laser beams? Tired of the futuristic gameplay? We're going back to World War II. We're going to have those iconic battles and weapons. We're going to have major levolution moments on D-Day. It's going to be amazing. Come buy our game. That sounds cool. Like, I'd buy that. That sounds intriguing to me. And so it really just comes down to, are gamers ready for a big World War II game? Or would it be a risk because they think that since it was oversaturated a number of years ago, that time period is no longer an interest to gamers, and so they might go futuristic? I have no idea, I don't have the stats in front of me. One hurdle that they would have to overcome, though, is that gamers have come to expect a ridiculous amount of customization when they buy shooters now. You look at Battlefield, Call of Duty, doesn't matter what it is, there is just a stupid amount of customization that you can tailor a gun or a class to your playstyle. There's an absurd amount of gadgets in Battlefield. You look at the weapon customization, it's through the roof with a wide variety of different scopes, underbarrels, barrel attachments, and all of this technology works in a modern military shooter, but this was not something that we had available during the time period of World Wars. And so it would be a little tricky for DICE to make it work in that setting, make it so that there was customization that fit the time period, but also gave us the flexibility to customize it to our playstyle that we've come to expect in a lot of our modern military shooters. I think it can be done. It is a hurdle that they would have to overcome, but it could be a little tricky. And so before I go on to the next question, I would like to know what you guys think. Would you like to see DICE create a big World War II shooter? Should they stay in the modern military setting, or should they go futuristic with like a Battlefield 2143? Let me know what you guys think down below. The next question for today comes from Sam, and it is, because in Battlefield Hardline, the cops and criminals who are not trained soldiers have cheaper, less maintained weapons, what do you think about adding in a jamming animation to all weapons? Certain weapons would have a higher chance of jamming than others, and this would be a good way to balance out some guns. I cannot believe how often I get this question or how popular it is amongst gamers, because from my viewpoint, from a gameplay standpoint, it doesn't sound enjoyable at all. Sure, it's realistic. Guns are going to jam, and especially in a criminal enterprise with people that are not experienced or don't have a military background, their weapons are going to jam more often. But you also have to remember that this is a video game, and to have a random factor like that, even if it's once in a blue moon, it's going to cause some frustration, and I know people are definitely going to rage when it does occur. Think, for example, you get this epic flank off on 2 or 3 enemies. You got them lined up, you're about to pull the trigger and just mow all of them down. But as soon as you do pull the trigger, your gun jams. You then maybe have to go through a quick 1-second animation to get things back up and running, but you guys know that 1 second is an eternity in any shooter. That 1 second gives the enemy plenty of time to be like, oh, hey, I heard a guy off to my left, it sounded like his gun jammed, I look over, he's fumbling over there, and then I'm able to take him out. That doesn't sound like a fun game mechanic, at least from my viewpoint. Randomness has its place in video games. I just don't necessarily think it should be applied to a competitive shooter where you want to have a reliable or a consistent weapon. Yes, it's more realistic. Yes, this would be another way for them to balance out their guns, but I would hope that the balance department, whoever works on balancing out their weapons, could be a little bit more creative instead of relying on a mechanic that would just be random and frustrating. For example, if you have an assault rifle that hits really hard and has laser beam-like accuracy, instead of just giving it a higher percentage chance at jamming, well, make it heavy. That way, when you aim down sight, it takes it longer for you to get your red dot sight up compared to other assault rifles. Maybe that weight will make it so that you can't sprint as quickly from point A to point B. That way, you have a consistent disadvantage. It's not random, leading to frustration, and overall, I find that to be better game design. It's clear that a lot of people like the idea of weapon jamming. Like, I cannot tell you how often I get this question, but hopefully I've illustrated why I think that would be a bad choice in first-person shooters and why I would not want to see that in Battlefield Hardline. The next question for today comes from Thomas, and it is, what do you think about adding in a system into Battlefield 4 so that if you get a headshot on somebody, the person cannot be revived? Now this is a really cool but complicated idea because there's so many advantages and disadvantages of having this type of system added into Battlefield 4. First of all, it would reward people more for going for headshots. If you know that there is a lot of medics, which is basically true for every map that you're playing on, going for a headshot on an enemy is going to guarantee that he is going to stay down. You don't have to worry about him anymore, at least for a couple of seconds before he spawns on in. And so you might see more of an incentive for just simply going for headshots. I mean, there's already the headshot multiplier, but you also know that he can't be revived. That sounds like a pretty great way at rewarding people for those skillful shots. This would also be a nerf to the medic class. I mean, we already know that medics are ridiculously powerful in Battlefield 4. Everyone is running around as the assault class, and having another way that we can reduce their effectiveness on the battlefield so that they just aren't quite as powerful, in my opinion, would be a step in the right direction. That being said though, and I realize I'm about to completely contradict myself, is that I find that people don't already revive enough, and if there was a mechanic added into the game that disincentivized using the defibrillators even more, it may just be phased out of the game entirely. I mean, sure, there'll be some people that will run it, but it clearly would not be the gadget that people would run. You'd more go down the path of the M320 with the med bag. I mean, I already have situations where I know that there are 4 or 5 assaults around me. I die, I'm not on the open, I'm basically at their feet, and they just kind of look at me real briefly, but then they're like, oh, hey, there's about a couple of people off in the distance, 100 meters away, I'm gonna try to take some pot shots at them and not go for the revive. Things have improved with the most recent update now that there is the triage system so that you know how long you have until you can no longer revive a player. That has helped a lot, but I still find in a lot of rounds, it doesn't matter what game mode I'm playing on, assault players, either they're no longer running the defibrillators anymore, or they just simply refuse to revive their teammates. I don't really know why that is the case. And so we would really just have to weigh the pros and cons of this type of system. Do we want to promote people to go more for headshots? Do we want to nerf the power of the defibrillator a little bit more than it is right now? This is all things that we would have to consider, because if the system like this was added into the game, it would change the way that we play basically every single class in the game. One idea that I had is that instead of just making it so that all classes got this benefit if they got a headshot on an enemy, maybe make it exclusive for the recons. Recons already have a hard time being successful, and if you get a headshot on someone who is 300 meters away and you see him about to get revived by his buddy, it's very difficult to get a follow-up headshot, especially on the medic, but also on the guy on the ground about to get back up. It's not an easy task to pull off one of those maneuvers. And to have it that if you do get a headshot, keeps him on the ground and guarantees that he's no longer getting revived, that'd be a great way at increasing increasing the power of the class overall. And so it's definitely an interesting concept. I like the idea, but we would probably have to test it out on the CTE just to make sure that it's not overpowered or it's really just what the Battlefield community would want. The next question for today comes from Ryan, and it is, what do you think about making it so that when someone causes the Levolution and kills a person, they get the kill? For example, people love to camp on Siege of Shanghai. If you cause a Levolution and they die, you should get the kill. It would help so that you can get rid of the annoying campers on the rooftops. What are your thoughts? Well, you have to remember that if you do take down the Siege of Shanghai tower, it's accomplishing exactly what you just described. Like, the recons can no longer sit on the top of the tower. They would have to move on over to another building, but they don't have that camping location. Sure, you don't get the kills, but I don't necessarily think that's a good idea to reward kills for performing a Levolution event. I can almost 100% guarantee if that's the way it worked, the tower on Siege of Shanghai would fall within the first couple of minutes of the round, every single round. People would fire RPGs just at the off chance that they were the last guy to fire the rocket which made the tower fall down, just so that they could maybe see a multi-kill on their screen. You know what would happen. I know what would happen. I maybe even be one of the players that would fire at it, because that's what people are always looking for. They always want to get that multi-kill, and if they have the off chance of killing like half of the enemy team with one rocket, they're gonna do it. Like, I can almost 100% guarantee that's what would happen. And I don't think that is what DICE was intending when they created Levolution. They wanted their maps to feel alive. They wanted them to feel dynamic, and so that you could use them tactically to push the favor into your team's side, but not necessarily just give you free points. And so while I definitely understand where you're coming from, I mean, who wouldn't want to have a multi-kill out of nowhere? Hopefully you can see where I'm coming from, why this wouldn't be a good idea, because then at that point, people would just be destroying the maps, destroy them just on the off chance that they could get a lucky few kills here and there. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you would like to submit your own question that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.